Shalom. Last week's Parashat Noach began with God's disappointment and his reconstructive destruction of all life on earth. Yet following the flood and Hashem's compassionate healing of the world, Torah presented us with a dismal portrait of an unrepentant mankind. Idolatrous beliefs had spread all over the world, leading to yet another worldwide effort to undermine God, headquartered at the Tower of Babel and orchestrated by the self-proclaimed king of the world, the enslaving, politically savvy warlord, Nimrod. He was a powerful demagogue whose very name means to rebel, and whose goal was to declare war on God and banish him from this world. There seemed to be no one to fight for the truth. The Creator was looking to be found, but was anyone interested in looking for him? It was reminiscent of the evocative imagery in Song of Songs chapter 2. Behold, he's standing behind our wall, looking from the windows, peering from the lattices. But it seems that as far as believing in the one Creator God, who cared about man, was concerned, humanity's motto was, move along now, there's nothing to see here. Indeed, in all his vainglorious hubris, man had erected an elaborate smokescreen designed to hide the divine presence that was virtually impossible to see through. Someone did see through, though. Our forefather Abraham, whom God calls through the prophet Isaiah in chapter 41, Abraham who loved me. What an unusual expression. Throughout the entire Bible of Israel, God does not use this description about any other righteous individual. Abraham who loved me. So who was this man, and what was the nature of this love? His name was first mentioned towards the conclusion of the portion of Noach with the genealogy of the 10 generations leading from Noah to Abraham. While the written Torah itself is reticent regarding Abraham's background and early years, the knowledge passed down to us through the sages of the Midrash fills in the backstory of this remarkable man who seemingly bursts onto the scene from nowhere. Abraham was born into a woke world that was mired in the deepest disbelief. Despite the recent divine retribution of the flood and the dispersion of the builders of the tower, Abraham's father cynically sold idols for a living, though privately admitting that they were nonsensical. We know that as a youth, Abraham rebelled against all the forms of idolatry that had engulfed the world. He stood up against his own family, destroying his father's idols. He clashed with the ruling authorities on account of his faith. On account of his belief, he was condemned to death and thrown into a fiery furnace by King Nimrod, miraculously emerging from that furnace unscathed. All this and more was alluded to at the conclusion of last week's portion of Noach in chapter 11, as we are informed that Avram's brother Haran died in a place called Ur Kasdim. And afterwards, we read, Terach took his son Avram and Lot, the son of Haran, his grandson, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of Avram his son, and they departed with them from Ur Kasdim to go to the land of Canaan. They arrived at Canaan and settled there. Ur Kasdim, literally the fire of Kasdim, is a veiled reference to Nimrod's fiery furnace. Midrash relates that at Avraham's judgment, King Nimrod also questioned Avram's brother Haran as to where he stands on this business of faith in one God, and Haran withheld his decision pending Avraham's outcome. When he saw that Avram emerged safely from the fire, Haran also declared his allegiance to the God of Avraham. But because his decision was insincere, based only upon expediency, he was consumed by the flames, because it doesn't count unless it's real. And the first time we really meet Abraham is in our very first verse this week, Genesis chapter 12 and verse 1, where God has already chosen him and is speaking to him, instructing him to travel to the land where he will bless him. This is the first of their meetings that we are privy to, but clearly it's not their first meeting. Abraham doesn't question as to the speaker's identity. He already knows him. The episode at Ur Kasdim was only a part of Abraham's backstory, only one of the events that led up to this amazing meeting. So where did he come from? And by this I really mean, how did he become the person he became? Speaking of Abraham in chapter 41, the prophet Isaiah rhetorically asks the same question. Who inspired the one from the east, at whose every footstep righteousness attended? Abraham is known to us as the first to recognize that the world has a creator, the first of the faithful. In his early days, Abraham suffered greatly as he attempted to find the truth for himself. But through his penetrating contemplation of the world, with his intense yearning for truth, he ultimately understood that there is a God. And all this he did on his own, with no teacher or instructor. Relating to this process of Abraham's spiritual maturation, the Midrash teaches that Abraham looked upon the world and said, "How could it be that there's no one in charge here? Who is the master of the house?" And the Holy One, blessed be he, appeared to him and said, "I am the master of the world." By deeply contemplating the world, Abraham was able to recognize God's presence on his own. And he understood that there's one God who created everything and who runs the world, and there's no one besides him. So open up your heart. As a result of his intense sincerity, his desire for truth, Abraham experienced a revelation. He understood that there's a creator, but he stood alone. Thus he is called Avraham HaIvri, Abraham the Hebrew, meaning on the other side, for he stood on one side against the whole world. We can hardly imagine the courage and determination, fueled by the purest faith, that enabled this man to face the challenge of leaving behind everyone and everything he knew. We can hardly imagine what the story of his being thrown into Nimrod's fiery furnace really means. Can there be a more powerful representation of the price one may be called upon to pay in this world for standing up to those who control through threat and terror, those who rule over others through darkness and fear? Yet, Abraham was not intimidated before these powers and did not give in to vulnerability and fear. He saw the world through a lens of kindness. He perceived the divine love and kindness through which and for which creation was brought into being. And this led him straight to a recognition of the Creator himself. He perceived the kindness of the Creator reflected in the world, and thus, seeking to emulate the Creator, he fervently clung to the attribute of kindness his whole life. This is why the patriarch Abraham is synonymous with kindness. Bestowing acts of kindness upon others was the main way in which he served God and by which he brought others to God, because it is through kindness that he found God. So open up your heart in the deepest way. Here is the secret of Isaiah's extraordinary expression, "Abraham who loved me." What exactly did God see in him to be deserving of this status that he didn't see in anyone else? Abraham was one, says the prophet Ezekiel. There wasn't another like him in all the world. Because Abraham revealed the truth on his own. All people are the sum total of their education, their accumulated knowledge and experiences, but not Abraham. He didn't start with any preconceptions at all. Nobody promised him a reward. Nobody threatened punishment. He was not motivated by any external factor. He loved Hashem for his own sake, a love not conditional or motivated by any other concern or interest. He had no teacher. Through his own intuitive wisdom, Abraham revealed the truth before any commandments were even given, and he kept them on his own, just for Hashem's sake. Thus, Maimonides explains that Abraham is the example par excellence of what it means to serve God motivated by love alone. Abraham had no motive other than to cling to the truth. No wonder so much is made in the teachings of our sages over how Abraham found God on his own. This is why God called him the one who loved me. Think about what it means to be standing on one side, alone against the world, the strength that it took not to be swayed by surroundings, society, friends, and family, to unabashedly oppose all those holding on to falsehood, which was everybody. But he did it with love. Facing down the whole world didn't bother him. He was ready to teach the truth with love and kindness to everyone. But wait, surely there had been others before him. The righteous Noah, Shem and Ever. We know that there had been tzaddikim, righteous individuals in the world before Abraham. He was not the first man of God in history. Yet with expressions like Abraham was one and Abraham who loved me, Torah is testifying to Abraham's singularity. So open up your heart deeper than ever before in your whole life. Because to Abraham, loving God meant that he did not keep God to himself. He was the first one to understand that he had to teach others, to take responsibility for others, to raise up new generations. It wasn't just Avraham, the lone individual. Chapter 12 and verse 5 tells us that Avram and his wife left to go to the land of Canaan, taking with them the souls they made in Haran. These were the people whom they brought to Hashem, and the verse accredits Avram and Sarai with literally creating these individuals. And next week in Parashat Vayera in chapter 18, Hashem will say, shall I conceal from Abraham what I do, now that Abraham is to become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by him? For I have loved him for that which he commands his children and his household after him, that they keep the way of Hashem, doing charity and justice. Abraham was unique in that he understood that he has to pass it on, to raise up a people, families, to initiate change in society, and to advertise and promote the name of God all throughout the world. Thus, chapter 12 tells us, he called out in the name of God, journeying steadily towards the south. He went blazing this trail for the whole world. For Abraham, loving God meant not only to love him, but also to work towards making him loved by others. True love of God motivates a person to want others to love. If a person loves God and he thinks, I'm good with God, I do good deeds, but his heart doesn't burn with pain that others don't know Hashem, if he's not motivated that others should learn and do and cling to Hashem, so that shows that there's something lacking in his love of Hashem, because real love means not keeping it to oneself, but wanting others to experience that love as well. May we merit to walk, to live in the path of our father Abraham, the one who educated us in faith, love, and knowledge of Hashem. He is the root of the path to Hashem, and whoever turns to Hashem in earnest is his offspring. He's not only the father to Israel, but father of all converts and all spiritual seekers who love God throughout every age. God declared that they are all the children of Abraham who loved me. Thank you for being a part of Jerusalem Lights and for your support that enables our outreach to continue and grow. May we boldly proclaim the oneness of God in this world and stand up for the truth in the manner of our father Abraham. Shabbat Shalom.